ChatGPT, ChatGPT, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is everywhere and everybody is talking about ChatGPT. But can ChatGPT be used in podcasting? And how can it simplify your overall podcasting process and help you get better with podcasting? Let's look at how ChatGPT can help you in podcasting in this video today. Hello and welcome to TPU TV. This is Dilip. If you're new here and you don't know me, then I'm a podcaster, blogger, and affiliate marketer. I run a podcast, the Podcasting University, which is all about podcasting and podcasting tips and how to get started with your own podcast. If you're new to podcasts and you're looking to get started with your own show, then you might want to join my free e-course, 10-day e-course on how to start a podcast. You'll be able to find a link to this course in the description box below. Go ahead, click the link and join the course today and get started with your own podcast. And if you're new to this channel, then you might want to subscribe to this channel and click the bell notification so that you stay updated with all of the latest videos that I release here, because I release a lot of practical and implementable tips on this channel here. Now, with all of that out of the way, let us get on to today's episode, ChatGPT. Now, every second article that you come across these days is about ChatGPT, and every second video is about ChatGPT. There is a lot that is being spoken about how to use ChatGPT in improving productivity, in getting better with things, and a lot of people are creating courses and prompts, and they're even making money by creating prompts in ChatGPT. But then the question is, can ChatGPT really be helpful in podcasting as well? In this video, I'm going to tell you 10 ways in which you can use ChatGPT to simplify your overall podcasting process and get the overwhelm out of the entire podcasting process. So let's get straight onto today's video. Number 1, idea generation. ChatGPT can play a very important role in idea generation for your podcast. If you're somebody who's running a monologue kind of a podcast and you're looking for topics or podcast topics for your episode, then ChatGPT can help you in generating a lot of topics in a fraction of a second. You can ask something like, what are some interesting topics for your specific niche, or what are some creative ideas for my next podcast episode? ChatGPT will then generate a list of ideas that you can use as a starting point for your podcast episodes. But while you're doing that, ensure that you are using a good prompt. Now, if you want to get the best out of ChatGPT, you need to learn how to write effective prompts. So use an effective prompt to generate ideas for your podcast episodes. But once you've done that, ensure that you're doing your due diligence in terms of researching a little bit on if that topic is actually an effective topic for your podcast. Number 2, research. ChatGPT does an amazing work in researching topics. You can give ChatGPT a prompt like, what are some interesting facts about my podcast topic? Or what are some interesting statistics that I can use in my podcast topic? And ChatGPT will generate a list of relevant information for that specific topic, which you can then use for your podcast episodes. So if you want to do research, and there are a lot of different facts that you can use to research your topic. So if you want to research a topic for your podcast episode, then use ChatGPT. It can simplify the process and in fact get you results much faster than you can give you results much faster than you would even expect. Number 3, script writing. Now, I use ChatGPT for a lot of script writing, both for my videos and my podcast episodes these days. You can use a simple prompt like, write an introduction for my podcast episode. And you can add some qualifying criteria to it. Like, for example, you can mention it as an engaging podcast introduction, or you can even write, create a curiosity invoking podcast introduction. So you can use one of these qualifying criteria to this prompt and get ChatGPT to write your scripts. Now, something like, what are some good transitions for my podcast episode, can give you a lot of different ideas that you can use in your podcasting. These are all excellent starting points for your podcast episodes, which can further help in getting better engagement on your episodes. Number 4, editing. Now, this is a very tricky piece, and while ChatGPT might not be able to edit your podcast episodes, it can give you a lot of ideas in terms of how to go about editing your episode. Now, you can give ChatGPT a prompt such as, how can I make my podcast episode more engaging? Now, for this, what you will have to do is you will have to have a podcast transcription, an episode transcription. Once you have the episode transcription, you can paste that into ChatGPT and give it a prompt like, how can I make my episode more engaging? Or you can ask a question like, what are some ways to improve the flow of my podcast episode? So ChatGPT will respond to these questions with some excellent suggestions on how to go about improving the quality of your podcast episode. You can go through these suggestions, pick the ones that suit you the most, and it'll help you in creating better episodes for your podcast. Number 5, guest suggestions. Now, this is another area where ChatGPT can be extremely helpful for you. There are a lot of podcasters who find it overwhelming to research and find guests for their podcast. ChatGPT can help you simplify that process. It can help you find guests for your podcast. You can give ChatGPT a very simple prompt like, who are some experts in my niche that I can invite as guests on my podcast? And ChatGPT will give you a list of suggestions. You can then go through each of those suggestions, do a little bit of research on who you think will be an ideal guest for your podcast episode, and then reach out to them. So if you're looking to bring on guests for your podcast, then ChatGPT can be extremely helpful in giving you a list of suggestions for your guests. Number 6, interview questions for your podcast guests. Now, this is another very effective way that you will be able to use ChatGPT for your podcast. You can take the help of ChatGPT and frame interview questions for your guests that you are inviting on your podcast. You can give ChatGPT a very simple prompt like, what are some common questions that my audience has about my niche? Or if you have a particular guest in mind, then you can enter the details of that guest into ChatGPT and ask a question like, what are some interesting questions that I can ask? If it is Pat Flynn, let me say, if I am looking at getting Pat Flynn on my podcast as a guest, then the prompt will be, what are some interesting questions that I can ask Pat Flynn during my podcast episode or in my podcast episode? And ChatGPT will generate a list of questions that you can use for your Q&A sessions with your guests. And this is one place where ChatGPT can be extremely helpful. Try writing effective prompts and you will see how easy it is to frame all of those questions that you would want to ask your podcast guests. Number 7, audience engagement. Engagement is a very difficult piece in podcasting, and a lot of podcasters find it difficult to find ways of getting their audience to engage with them or to engage their audience. Now, ChatGPT can help you with audience engagement. You can give ChatGPT a prompt like, what are some ways to encourage my audience to participate in my podcast episode? Or something like, what are some interesting discussion topics that my audience can engage with in my podcast episode? So if you ask these kind of questions, if you write these kind of prompts, ChatGPT will give you suggestions on what you can do or how you can go about getting your audience to engage with your episode or engage with your podcast. You will have to do a little bit of trial and error here. You will have to frame different kind of prompts and see what is the response that ChatGPT is giving you. But if you're able to put together a good prompt, you'll always be able to get a lot of suggestions on how to get your audience to engage with your podcast. And ChatGPT can help you in that. Number 8, show notes. This is an amazing feature in ChatGPT. While I've been using a software called as Podium to generate all of my show notes, transcripts, and podcast episode title, my blog posts, pretty much everything. And Podium is one excellent software that you might want to check out. I'll leave a link in the description box below. You can go and check it out. But ChatGPT can also do an excellent work in terms of writing the show notes for you. You can write a simple prompt like, what are the key takeaways from my podcast episode? Or what are some interesting quotes that I can include in my show notes from this podcast episode? But keep in mind here that you will need a transcript from your podcast. You will have to paste that transcript into ChatGPT and then ask these questions or then use these prompts. And ChatGPT will then generate a list of important points and quotes that you can then use to create a detailed show notes for your podcast episode. But if you're using Podium, Podium does all of this pretty fast and very easily. So go try it out. All that you need to do is just upload your podcast episode onto Podium and it generates pretty much everything that you will need, like an email, a transcript, show notes, blog post, pretty much everything that you will need. So give it a try. The link for Podium will be there in the description box below. Go give it a try. Ninth one, social media promotions. Now, promoting your podcast is extremely important. While a lot of people put in a lot of time in content creation and a lot less time in promoting, it should be the other way around. You should be spending a lot more time in promoting your podcast. And when it comes to promotion, social media is the first thing that comes to your mind. But the problem is that if you want to promote your podcast on social media, you will have to once again generate a lot of content that you can then post on social media. ChatGPT can do all of this for you. And this is a very effective way of using ChatGPT for your podcast. You can write a simple prompt like, what are some catchy headlines from my podcast episode that I can use on social media? Or something like, what are some interesting snippets from my podcast episode that I can use on social media? And ChatGPT will give you a lot of ideas that you can use to promote your podcast on social media platforms. In fact, once you've pasted the transcript into ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT to write a caption from the transcript for your Instagram post. You can also ask ChatGPT to write a Facebook post for promoting that particular podcast episode. Or even if it is on Twitter, you can ask ChatGPT to write a series of tweets that you can use to promote that particular podcast episode. So all of this can be extremely fast on ChatGPT, and response that is generated by ChatGPT is amazing. So you should give it a try. If you're doing social media promotion for your podcast, then you need to take the help of ChatGPT. The 10th and the last one, audience feedback. ChatGPT can help you in podcasting in terms of getting audience feedback as well. While ChatGPT cannot go out there to your audience and ask them for the feedback, it can give you some interesting tips on how to get audience feedback. You can write a prompt such as, what are some common criticisms or feedback that I can expect from my audience about my podcast episode? Or what are some interesting questions that I can ask my audience to get their feedback on my podcast episode? So these kind of prompts will give you a list of ideas that you can use when you're reaching out to your audience to get feedback. Because a lot of times when you're reaching out to your audience for feedback, you will find that the response is very cold. There are very few people who will respond to your questions. So you can use ChatGPT to generate effective questions that you can then go out there and ask your audience to get feedback for your episode. If you use ChatGPT the right way, you will get a lot of effective question formats that you can then use to get audience feedback for your podcast. So those were 10 ways that you can use ChatGPT for your podcast, as in podcasting. So if you're looking to simplify your overall process flow in podcasting, then I would recommend that you give ChatGPT a try, because ChatGPT is amazing. It can simplify things. It can get things faster. And when you're able to get things faster, you will get a lot more time that you can then use for promoting your podcast. So give it a try. And if you have any questions, then do let me know by commenting below the video, and I will respond to all of those questions there. And if there is a need to create a video around any of those questions, I will do that as well. Now, if you're looking for effective ChatGPT prompts, you can always do a quick Google search and you will find a ton of articles that will give you a lot of ChatGPT prompts, which you can then use to get effective responses from ChatGPT. So that is all that I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed these 10 tips that I shared about using ChatGPT in podcasting. If you like this video, then do give this video a thumbs up so that others are able to find this video and they are able to benefit from this video. And if you're new to this channel here, then don't forget to click the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any of the latest videos that I release. I release a video every Thursday here, so keep watching TPU TV if you're looking at practical and implementable tips for your podcast. That is all that I have for this video. Don't forget to join my 10-day e-course on how to start a podcast if you're looking to get started with the podcast. The link is there in the description box below, and do check out Podium. It is an amazing software if you're looking to generate show notes, blog posts, and email content to send across to your email subscribers. I'll be back again the next week with another practical and implementable podcasting tip. Until then, keep watching TPU TV. This is goodbye from Dilip. You all have a wonderful rest of the week.